Hey guys, today we're going to talk about firearms basics. And since we are such a range of knowledge about this, I'm going to try to, like I said, really start with the basics. And then if we want to discuss further, if you have questions for me or something, we can do that later. But really, we're just going to start off at the beginning and go from there. Prior to that, I would love for you all to fill out this Google form that will help me kind of see where you guys are, if you've had any prior contact with guns or anything like that. And I'll share this Google form, like I'll share the results with the class at the end. Okay, so if you could do that, that'd be great. Just go ahead and pause it and do it real quick. Okay, once you're done with that, first we need to talk about what can be classified as a firearm. So most of you go, obviously guns, right? Sure, guns are. But what else could be classified as a firearm? So anything that can expel a projectile, but also has to be by reason of explosive. So for a gun, the explosive is the gunpowder in there, right? It's ignited and it creates a buildup of gas and then it pushes a projectile out. So what else could do that? Well, the reason they had to come up with a legal definition of a firearm is that people were making items in a 3D printer that could act as a gun and it could make it through checkpoints at airports and stuff like that. So they designed a definition of a firearm to be able to prosecute people in the court of law for having those items to hurt people. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to do that. So I kind of want to just make sure you know that's the actual definition of a firearm. So when it comes to firearms, besides not knowing, what classifies as one, a lot of people have misconceptions about them. So for example, these things on the screen right now, what would you call them? So take a minute, answer in your head, what would you think they're called? So most people would say to me, oh, that's a bullet. That's incorrect. It is not a bullet. There's a couple of things you can call these, but bullet is not one. So it is correct to call them a round, or it's correct to call them a cartridge. And the reason you can't call them a bullet is because the bullet is only this top area, this top piece. Okay, it looks like a little cone. Well, and this one's a flat cone. Okay, so the bullet is literally the projectile. So let's take a look at the different things that are in a round or cartridge. So it depends on if it's a rifle or a handgun or a shotgun. So shotguns have totally different cartridges. And I'm sorry, I'm starting from right to left, but we're looking at the shotguns here. So a shotgun cartridge, and you'll see a picture in a second. It's like a piece of plastic and it has metal on the bottom, and then all of these different things go inside of it, right? So sometimes there's powder. There's a little bit of powder. There's also a wad that goes in there. The wad is a plastic piece that separates the primer from the actual shot or slug. And the difference between shot and slug is just depending on what you're going after, right? So if you're trying to shoot a large game, like large animal, like deer, bear, anything like that, you'd use a slug because that would be a big piece of metal to stick in them. If you're doing it for self-defense, just to have in your house, you'd probably just use shot because that gives us a nice, that's the great thing about a shotgun is it gives us a nice, it spreads out as it goes farther away. So shot goes in lots of places, not just one little place where a wad would go. Rifles and handguns have the similar type of ammunition as far as like the way that the actual cartridge looks, but in a rifle are typically bigger, right? Longer. There's going to be more powder. The bullets can be the same type, but let me just show you real quick. So here's what they look like. So on the left-hand side is what the shotgun cartridge looks like, and on the right-hand side is what a rifle or a handgun or a pistol would look like. This on the right-hand side, that's actually a rifle round. You wouldn't put that in any kind of handgun as I'm looking at it. Okay, it's just so you guys can see all the different pieces. Something interesting you may or may not have known, both of these cartridges can be produced at home. You can buy a mechanism to be able to make all of these things. My dad has that stuff. So it's called a reloading machine, and you can actually make these things at home. You don't have to just buy them from a factory, which is so interesting to me. It's kind of a little hobby, if you guys get into hunting or anything like that. Okay, this slide explains what all the parts are. Like, what do they do? Each part of the cartridge. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'll talk about a couple of the interesting ones. So if you look at the back, which again, if I had a cartridge right now, I'd show you, but if you look at the back of a cartridge, it has a little tiny circle on the back of it. That's typically the primer. And the primer is what the firing pin hits, and then it causes the powder to ignite. And then when the powder ignites, it creates enough gas pressure in there, and it pushes the actual bullet out. You'll see a good picture of this in a little bit. The casings in the picture, let me go back here to show you. So see how these casings, these are all brass. You can see that's what they're all made of. That's a very common alloy to be made out of because it's strong enough, but it's cheap also. So there's different reasons you'd have different casings. For example, aluminum is ultra cheap. Steel is really strong. So if you're going to reload bullets, you'd want something in steel so it holds up. Also, if you're going to be somewhere carrying ammunition for a while, like let's say that you're going in the jungle and you're going to shoot at people, like you're in a war, not just randomly shoot at people. But if you're in a war and you want ammunition, you probably want it made of something like aluminum so that it's light if you're carrying it around. So those are just some different reasons you'd have different metals made of it. There are different bullets that can be made. There's some that, let's go back to the slide again. There's some that have what's called a hollow point, like this right here, and this right here, and this right here. What's significant about those is when the bullet goes out, when it's projected out, it actually opens up, so it does more damage when it hits the soft tissue. And these guys right here, the one with the red tip, that's what's called a tracer round. So if you shot that at night, you could see it. It would actually glow and show you kind of where it's going. Those are just some of the different things. There's lots of different, there's armor piercing rounds that go through, I forget how much steel, but they go through a lot more than a normal bullet would. I think that's all I want to tell you. Okay, so let's talk about types of firearms. So the big categories are, so long guns can be a category, and then guns that are not long guns, right? Long guns, and we'd call handguns or pistols. Those are two ways to say it. So when we look at long guns, what's the difference between a rifle and a shotgun? Think about that right now. Can you answer that in your head? The difference between a rifle and a shotgun. Okay, so a shot, and what situations would you use each? So let's talk about it real quick. So a rifle, one of the very specific things that a rifle has that you may or may not know, it literally has what's called rifling. So if you looked, hopefully it was, if you ever looked down the barrel of a rifle, you would literally see these spirals inside, and that's called rifling. Because all these barrels of these guns are made so that when the bullet goes down the actual barrel, it spins. That's how it actually gets its, this would be a physics question, but that's how it gets its projectile motion and enough acceleration, right, to go and keep straight of where you're trying to point it, is that circular spin. Whereas a shotgun does not have this. A shotgun, if you look down it, it's just completely smooth. There's no rifling in there at all. So a shotgun is a different mechanism, right? Remember, it's the little shot or the wad that gets shot out of the shotgun. And the shotgun, the bullet's not going like this, it's going straight out. And then when those pellets are released, and we call them BBs or pellet or shot, they'll spread out like this. And what's really nice about that is you have a big target. It's very easy to hit something with a shotgun. That's why people like shotguns for self-defense, especially people that are very bad aim, because they're more likely to hit something with a big area like that than if you have a little tiny bullet and you have to hit just that little area. So that's why shotguns are used in self-defense, because you can hit stuff easier if you're not very accurate. Another reason, the difference between a rifle and a shotgun. So a rifle, you might have seen in movies or whatever, people that are snipers use rifles, right? Because rifles do go a longer range. And again, that has to do with the rifling in the barrel. So if I wanted to shoot somewhere a mile away, which is crazy, but yes, they can do that, I'd have to use a rifle. Okay, I can't use a shotgun for that. So short distance is shotgun, long distance is rifle. The other thing is just the use. Like, what are you going to use it for? Are you going to use it for self-defense? Are you using it for hunting? Depending on what you're going to hunt for. If you're going to hunt birds in the sky, it's probably way easier to use a shotgun because again, you're going to use what's called bird shot. They have little pellets. Because again, you don't want a big chunk of metal hitting the bird, and also it's very hard to hit them with just one piece like that. Where if you got lots of little pieces, it's much easier. We talk about handguns. So handguns, or AKA pistols, there's two major types. So the two major types are revolvers and SLPs, which are self-loading pistols. So for a self-loading pistol, it's probably like most pistols you've ever heard of. It's going to have a magazine. And the magazine is going to, every single time you shoot the gun, it's going to chamber around up into the firing, like up into the cartridge into the firing pin, so that it's ready to be hit and expelled. So the bottom line is, if it has a magazine, it's a self-loading pistol. If it doesn't, and it has like a barrel thing, it's a revolver. So a revolver it has 6 different holes where there could be a cartridge. And what's interesting about a revolver is it's been harder to catch people that use revolvers in crimes, because the big difference between revolvers and self-loading pistols is self-loading pistols will eject the cartridge, not the cartridge, just the casing. It ejects the casing, so therefore it's left wherever they shot. Whereas a revolver keeps it in the actual barrel, in the little barrel round thing where the cartridges are held. So that's something interesting. Unless there was a case, one of the CSIs told us one time, where somebody was really stupid and they had a revolver and they used all 6 shots and they emptied it right there at the scene, which is just ridiculous, but people just don't think they're crazy. So the difference between a submachine gun and a machine gun. Let's talk about that real quick. So a lot of people don't know what that is. So the difference between a machine gun and a submachine gun is literally a machine gun shoots rifle rounds, rifle cartridges, like a 308 or a 7.62 by 39 for an AK, or a 22 round. And a submachine gun shoots pistol rounds. So like 9mm or 45 or a 380. Any of those are shot by a submachine gun. That's literally it. And the submachine guns are typically smaller, although you can find ones with attachments and all this other business. But typically a submachine gun is smaller and it's going to have less kick. Like, it's not going to push you back when you fire it as much. And a machine gun is, you've seen probably war movies where people are like barely holding on to it. It's like pushing them back and they're falling over. It's because every time a bullet is expelled, it leaves energy, so it pushes you back. So that's the big difference between those. Something that people don't know is that when we talk about an AR-15 and an M16, the pictures are below here. By the way, this on the bottom is the AR-15 and the top one's the M16. What they stand for. So a lot of people used to think the AR stands for assault rifle. It does not. It stands for Armalite, which is the company that developed it. And the 15 is just the model number. And then the M16 is a fully automatic version of the AR-15, but the M stands for military. And the 16, again, is the model number. So when you see somebody, you can ask them, hey, do you know what the AR stands for? And you can show them your gun knowledge with that. Because a lot of people don't know that. They think it stands for assault rifle. And that's not true. So the difference between an AR-15 and M16, M16s are typically fully automatic and AR-15s are not. Okay. All right, so when we have a bullet that comes from a body and a gun, maybe that we find, and we want to match them as far as the crime scene goes, there's several things we can look at. So we can look at the actual size of the bullet and compare it to the gun it was shot out of, right? Is that the correct caliber? You know, I wouldn't have a 45 bullet and then a gun that shoots a 9mm. That doesn't make sense. I'm going to look at the striations, which is the picture over here on the right-hand side. So when the bullet goes through the barrel, it actually gets specialized markings on it based on each pistol it's in or rifle it's in. Because a rifle will have that rifling, the twist on it, It'll have a twist, and then it has what's called lands and grooves that make those twists. So you're looking for a match. And what they'll do is they'll look under a comparison microscope, which we're going to do in a second, and you can see what that looks like. The other thing we can look at is on the back. If you look at the back of a casing, the back circle part, the firing pin, remember I told you it hits the primer. So when it hits the primer, it leaves a mark because this is soft metal, right? So it's a very hard force, and it hits the back of it, and it makes a mark. So I'm going to show you what that looks like too in a second, because you're going to be doing a lab on this in a couple days. So I want you to be able to see it. So before I show you what that looks like, I want you to know how CSIs do it. So if they were to get a gun at a crime scene, they're going to do a couple things with it. They're going to test fire it. And typically they test fire it into one of these, like this picture here, one of these tanks. They can be filled with water or gel solution. And to be able to see what the bullet looks like when it is thrown from that gun, right? They can compare it under the comparison microscope, which let's take a look at real quick. So this website I'm going to take you to, it's actually one that they train on. Currently, the people that are, it's going to make me put my stuff on, there we go. Currently, people that are ballistics experts in our area, they actually have to train on this program right here. So I just want to show you what this looks like, because you're going to be doing this. So here's a bullet. And so these are unknowns that you got from a crime scene, and here's some standards, right? So we're trying to compare it. Like, do you think this bullet came from this gun? And you can adjust the magnification to try to look at it, stuff like that. Okay. The other thing I want to show you though is let me see if I can get back to it here. Is what the back of it looks like, where the firing pin mark is. Yeah, this should have it. Okay, so this right here, I actually picked a good one. You see how that looks like a rectangle? So that's actually really specific to a Glock. And apparently they're changing them, but that made it really easy. Oh, look, I picked one that was probably its match. So you have to adjust it and focus it to see, and you would really look at this in high magnification to kind of compare it to see if you could match it. Because even if they both were a Glock, it's not like, oh, that's going to match. And I'll have you take this test so you can see how the different indentations can look. I'll have you guys play around with this in the lab that we're going to do. Okay, let me get out of this, because we'll do that later. Okay, I just wanted you to see what it looks like under a comparison microscope. By the way, it's very tedious work. It's hard. You have to look at all the different striations and make sure they line up if you're going to call it a match. Okay, so types of entrance wounds. So I told you I wanted to show you a picture of what a gun looks like in slow motion when it's firing. And here is specifically like what's happening. So it says gas, heat, smoke, gunpowder, and then bullet over here. And the bottom pictures are indicating from closest in A to farthest in D how far the shooter was. So if somebody is very close or even touching the skin, like if they take the gun and they actually, like they point it up to the person's skin, you're going to have more like a mark like A. If somebody is within 2.5, 3 feet, you might have something like D. Okay, so I'm going to show you some other pictures of them. So sorry for the gross pictures, but these pictures are to show stippling. So this is obvious that this was a shotgun that did this. And stippling is actually, I'm sorry, it's not a shotgun. This one is, if that was a shotgun, there would be no head left. In the picture on the right, the stippling is from the shot being very close or maybe pressed up against the head. And the red dots that you see all around are unburned gunpowder. So it burns marks, which is called stippling on the person if they're close. So you also, I think this one is a shotgun though. This one's a shotgun to the leg. And again, I don't think that's a shotgun because you wouldn't have a head left. But this, I'm pretty sure this one is a shotgun on this one. And again, this stippling here is from the shot that was really close and hit. It might be embedded in the leg actually, and you can get that out. All right, so this is just showing you a distance determination. So if you've ever had at the airport, if they've ever swabbed your hand with one of those little things, what they're checking for, like this on your hand, and they check it. They're checking to see if you've been in contact with anything that would be any type of explosive. So whether a firearm or a bomb or anything like that, they typically use the same type elements, and they'll do an analysis on it to see what comes back. Now, they've kind of shied away from that test because is it illegal to fire a firearm? No. So even if you were involved in a crime, it's not illegal to go to the shooting range and fire one. So it's very hard to prove anything with that. They've decided now in the court. Okay, so what I need you guys to do for the rest of the class, or before we have next class, is work on the Module 6 study questions. And the next thing we're going to do after this is we're going to do a ballistics lab where we're going to be online like that, looking at the actual striations and the marks in the back of that the firing pin makes and stuff like that. Okay, so good timing. My neighbor's dog started barking. So, all right, I'll see you guys later. Good luck with the Module 6 study questions.